My dog is a dork. Anyway, okay, so, okay, now, overview of what we just went over on those locks, okay, locking mechanisms. Now, right now, I'm not saying that there's no better out there, but for right now, what I own and what I know, you know, I haven't been seeing Hinders move lately, and I think people haven't been really appreciating Hinder, and even I thought he's a kind of a crazy redneck, you know, but the truth is, Hinder knows his stuff. I mean, it must be all that, you know, field experience he's got, because these two knives represent it, and these are no way first or second place. These are tied, and this would be better if, I would prefer, this is the XM24 with a flipper, okay? And I got my flipper one upstairs, but the point is, if you had the flipper, they both have lock bar stabilizers, and the Hinder stabilizers. So this way the bar doesn't go that way, inwards. Then they both meet flush, but meet far behind the pivot, okay? And then, of course, Hinder might have a flipper. They both have choils. So these are the top of Framelocks, and this is at an expensive level, okay? Next comes production level knives. Compression lock is the next strongest, okay, because it's pinched. This lock bar is almost like that fancy lock up in there, which is another reason why this is top, if you watch that video. And watch this video too, because this lock bar, I mean, the stop pin is shouldered and larger than this screw. The pivot is shouldered and larger than this screw. So it's deceiving. And then that lock bar is pinched between those things and the blade tang. Kind of like a reverse of what this does. This is the strongest lock that I would say I know of in the production world. Next comes, and you know, there might be other ones, but at this moment, okay, in this video especially. Then comes this bolt lock, which is kind of like the axis lock, but superior only because this one actually sticks a rod, rather than having a tube. This is a solid rod, that pin that goes into the back of this blade tang, which I'm going to do a video on this. So this thing is solid feeling. There's no other way to explain this knife. This thing is, you can tell there's a sort of, if you can see inside here, that pin, you see it? That pin goes right into the back. Okay, then comes this liner lock. Cold steel, hey, you know, onion liner lock, I always went over, that has a lock, kind of short, a short lock bar. This one has an extra rigidity built into the lock bar if you watch that liner lock video. If not, you know, we're talking, you know, sure, a thicker lock bar helps, but it's important that the lock not be disengaged, like not have a cutout tube for you to actually disengage it. And if it does, like on the military or this, you should sand it down so that your hand doesn't catch it. Okay, then next strongest comes a frame lock that's done right. You know, perhaps just the geometry of how it all meets. We have this one with this little curve that makes it bend that way. It sits in deep, and they did a special thing to that surface, and I don't know what they did. I really don't. All I know is it was grainy, like as if it was a rock. It had like a sandpaper texture to the top of the lock bar face, and when I first got it and opened it up, and it's worn in and created like a nice angle in there. And you can see that this one, and then this one, because of flat profile, you hold the whole thing. So it's not really like when you do cutting motions, does it possibly push this out of the way, because you're actually holding the whole dang thing. And still has a safety. So this is good, and it will last that way. You know, because it is at least somewhat flush, and it still actually has an a gap forming over this way, this direction, which then gets into locks that do that, but then have at least a stabilizer, finger choil and case, and then the gap forming over here on this side. You know, it's basically, it's like an open space that closes and touches in here. Basically, lock bars that are production level that mate right here in a corner that wears out, but makes the blade tang pushes the lock bar in rather than out towards you and unlocking the knife. And then, but those will wear out. And then comes the same idea, the same type of lock, but at a level without a lock bar stabilizer. But you know, this one is one of the best in the category because this one at least has a flipper too, and it has that flat profile similar to a Sage. And then beyond that, the other knives you saw in the video, they're not here. You know, that is, you know, in honesty, that is something you have to look at. The safe, you know, frame lock that's safe is going to be expensive and has a lot of features to it that you have to look for. You know, look for liner locks. Like I said, now pay attention to that. You know, titanium soft. You know what I mean, ignore titanium liner locks in my opinion. The steel lock bar, you know, it's going to wear better. And if it bends, it bends. Your knife is done with, but at least it didn't, you know, cut you. And then, you know, you have at a production level these locking mechanisms that aren't liner locks or frame locks at production level are honestly actually stronger. At least these two, you know. And then come a frame lock that's done right, you know, at a production level. This is why the Sage is so awesome. And then here, you know, the liner lock, you know, cold steel. I mean, just take it as cold steel really emphasizes lockup. And so this is, you know, if this is how they did it, this is a way to kind of see what a liner lock should be like. And then, I mean, look how far they go to prevent that lock bar from bending. You know how, like on that Lum Tanto, the lock bar would flex. This one doesn't flex because there's a rod-shaped bend in there, a kind of a blood groove, along with this little flat piece that they curve over to give it a sort of rigidity from going like that, like it did on the Lum. You see, that's why. Okay, and because it sits at that angle and it mates right. And then, like I said, at a custom knife level, you know, if they make, you know, if the lock bar can't quickly reach that angle like this liner lock, you know, can't quickly, you know, from a short distance go like that, then they'll, you know, if it goes like that, they'll grind the surface, the top lock bar surface down to where it creates that same angle when it meets that you see on a liner lock. If that made any sense. And then come, I said, frame locks again, repeat. And again, regardless, with all frame lock knives, you know, I think it's just a necessity. You have to have choils for safety, finger guards. If you see, these are all due. I mean, I don't consider them. These are knives that I own. So, okay. Hope this video was helpful. Just the main thing, you know, I'm not trying to like particularly bash on a certain brand or a knife that you own. It's just for your own safety. I just don't want you to misinterpret. You know, you have to know your knife, and I'm just trying to help, hopefully help that, and help you decide what knife you want to look at. And then some of the knives here that didn't really, you know, make the cut. You know, okay. Again, I'll give a quick little overview. Make this video 10 minutes. Lock bar you can access with your, by accidentally disengage. You can actually disengage the lock bar, but the angle was neat on this one, and the lock bar width right there helped it not bend inward, and the stainless steel made it more solid. Titanium soft, you know, long lock bar, you know, meets flush, you know, and it, you know, all disaster. Doesn't go too, the lock bar doesn't go far behind the pivot. All reason for disaster. Same thing, lock bar goes down far. This one doesn't go too far behind the pivot again, and you know, it's just not so good, not so good. And then it doesn't have safety, doesn't have a choil. This one is good. I just didn't put it here because it's the same thing as the M1. I was just like, heck, you know. But this one, I put the M1 over this one because this one is a stainless steel liner, while that one is a titanium bar at least. But this one bent in, this one would bend in too. So, and that one at least has a guard too, okay? And it has a backup locking mechanism, so that one's good. I mean, it would be there, but I just, yeah. Anyway, okay, and then lock bars that don't have choil, you know, knives that don't have finger guards, don't, you know, have access to the lock bar, have blade, the tangs, and the blade lock bar don't meet on a production level. You know, I would rather this be like a strider than basically meet, you know, the two pieces meet, you know, not flush like that, to where a corner, just that corner was touching, so they would push in that way, you know. But you know, there's those, so you know, don't get things like that. And then liner locks, you know, like I said, this one's a good one. Just look for ones that are short and angled quickly, and make sure there's not a huge gap on the side of the knife, so that they wouldn't slide in between that gap in the blade, the liner and the blade tang, and then possibly allow the blade to move around the lock bar like that, basically. And it's fine. Okay.